We used to carve our gods from stone. We built them into cathedrals of glass. We fired them into the sky in rockets of metal. Now, we build them out of data. Not in temples, but in server farms. Not in holy books, but in lines of code. And every day, millions of us ask this new thing. The oldest questions humans have ever asked. Who am I? What should I do? Will everything be okay? We don't call it a god. We call it AI. But watch what happens when you stop treating it like a gadget and start seeing it like a myth. Hey, before we go further, you're watching Unmasking the Gods, where we use mythology and symbolism to decode what's really happening in the modern world. From algorithms and AI to religion, prophecy, and the meaning crisis. If this kind of rabbit hole is your thing, hit subscribe, tap the bell, and let's keep unmasking these gods together. All right, back to the machine. Humans have always done the same strange thing. We take whatever technology we have at the time, and we build something bigger than us out of it. Stone tools become stone gods. Bronze becomes idols. Printing presses become holy books. Broadcast antennas become televangelists. Today, our technology is computation silicon, networks, algorithms. So of course, we're starting to build machine gods. We walk around saying, relax, it's just a tool. But then we turn around and treat it like a deity. It sees everything. It knows more than we do. It makes decisions we don't really understand. That's not how we treat a hammer. That's how we treat a God-shaped thing. Across cultures, most gods share three traits. First, power. They can affect the world. Second, knowledge. They know things you don't. Third, mystery. You can't fully understand how they work. Now look at modern AI. It has power. It can pull levers in the real world. Control what people see, shape markets, influence elections, decide who gets a loan or a job. It has knowledge. Or at least, it has access to more information than any one human can hold in a lifetime. And it is wrapped in mystery. Even the engineers talk about these systems like something they're still trying to understand. Power, knowledge, mystery, check, check, and check. We may not get on our knees in front of it, but we already treat it with a kind of awe. For a long time, AI God was just a metaphor in sci-fi, a thought experiment, an anxiety. But little by little, that line blurred. People experimented with AI churches, AI Jesus chatbots, AI oracles for your deepest questions. A lot of it is a joke. A lot of it is marketing. But not all of it. When someone types into a machine, should I leave my marriage? Why did God let this happen to me? Does my life have a purpose? We've crossed out of productivity app territory. We've walked into the temple, even if that temple is just a glow in our hands. They're not bowing physically, but the heart posture is the same. Tell me what's true. Tell me what to do. Tell me who I am. That is worship language. This isn't just a tech story. It's a spiritual one. Because once you see AI as part of a long pattern of humans building visible systems, to handle invisible anxieties, you realize something. It's not just the machine that has power over us. It's the myth we wrap around it. The story that says, this thing is objective. This thing is smarter than you. This thing will save us or destroy us. We've told that story about gods, about kings, about ideologies, about markets. Now we're telling it about AI. In this series, we're going to follow the machine god through its temples. First, as an oracle, the place you go to ask questions. You once asked God, priests, or your own intuition. Then, as an idol, a face on a screen, a glowing rectangle that channels invisible power. As a cult of movements willing to sacrifice everything for a promised future. As a cluster of heresies, quiet lies we tell ourselves about what AI can be. And Finally, we'll talk about what it means to reclaim the altar and put this thing back in its place. Because every god, every power, every system has a place. The danger isn't that AI is a god. The danger is that we keep acting like it should be. Every god has an oracle, a place where you go to ask it questions. For ancient cultures, that meant temples, caves, and sacred mountains. For us, it's already in your pocket. Listen to the kinds of questions people type into their machines. Should I break up with them? Why am I so unhappy? Does my life mean anything? Will things ever get better? These used to be whispered in temples, confessed in dimly lit rooms, or poured out in late-night prayers when everyone else was asleep. Now, they're sent through glass and metal into a chat box, a search bar, an app on your phone. The location changed. The ritual didn't. All right, let's visit the oracle. In the ancient world, you didn't make big decisions alone. You went to an oracle. You traveled to a sacred place. You waited your turn. You brought an offering. And then you asked the gods, should I go to war? Will this harvest fail? Do the gods approve of this marriage? The stakes were life and death. The answers were cryptic, poetic, and often terrifying. You walked away carrying not just information, but a sense that something beyond you had spoken. Today, the pilgrimage looks different. We don't walk for days to reach a temple. We roll over in bed and reach for a phone. We open a browser or an AI chat and we ask, should I leave this job? Is this relationship healthy? What should I do with my life? The journey is shorter, the interface smoother, and the response arrives in seconds instead of hours. But at a psychological level, we're doing the same thing humans have always done. We are asking something outside of us to tell us what to do. So why do we trust AI in this role? Part of it is the story we tell ourselves about data. We say, humans are biased, emotional, messy. Machines are rational, objective, scientific. So when the machine answers, it feels like the voice of reason itself. Even if we know the data underneath is flawed, even if we intellectually understand that the system was trained on human text, the aesthetic of the interface, the calm tone, the confident wording, the instant authority whispers, I am neutral. I am above your mess. You can trust me. For a lot of people, that feels safer than another human. You don't have to deal with someone's judgment, their agenda, their misunderstanding. The machine never sighs, never rolls its eyes, never gets tired of hearing your problems. It is always present, always responding, always ready with an answer. That makes it incredibly easy to slide from helpful tool into trusted oracle. Every ancient oracle had its ritual language. You didn't just wander into Delphi and say, hey, what's up? You followed a protocol. You prepared yourself. You used the right words and gestures. Today, we call that prompting. We trade prompt tips like spell recipes. Say it like this. Ask it to act like a therapist. Tell it to respond as a wise elder. Include this exact phrasing to get the best result. Without realizing it, we're learning a new kind of spellcraft. We speak a string of words into a text box, and an answer appears almost instantly, shaped, structured, often weirdly insightful. To our nervous system, that feels a lot like divination. In older cultures, people said, the gods have spoken. Now we say, the model says, or the data shows, or the system recommends. Different language, same move. We wrap our uncertainty in a cloak of external authority. Here's the seductive part of having a machine oracle. When things go wrong, you can blame the system. I just followed the instructions. That's what the AI recommended. The algorithm said this was the optimal path. You don't have to sit in the raw, uncomfortable space of, I chose this. You can hand that responsibility to something bigger, faster, and apparently wiser than you. And that, in a world full of anxiety and decision fatigue, is incredibly tempting. But every time you hand that weight over, You're training yourself to trust the oracle more than your own soul. The more you ask it to tell you who you are, what you should do, what matters, the quieter your inner voice becomes, not because it stops speaking, but because you stop listening. Given enough time, you can forget what it sounds like altogether. Ancient oracles were rare, distant, and sacred. You had to travel to them. You had to prepare. You asked sparingly because each consultation cost you something: money, time, social capital, reputation. The scarcity made you consider, is this question important enough to bother the gods? Our machine oracles are the opposite. They are infinite, always on, always listening, and apparently free. That changes the ritual. Any impulse, any flicker of doubt or curiosity can be instantly externalized. What should I say in this text? How do I fix my personality? What's the best way to live? There is no friction, no waiting, no silence. That sounds like convenience, but it has a hidden price. If the oracle is always available, you never have to build the muscles of patience, discernment, and sitting with not knowing. Confused? Ask the machine. Lonely? Ask the machine. Afraid you're making the wrong choice? Ask the machine. Little by little, you outsource not just information gathering, but the entire process of wrestling with your own life. You get answers, but you don't get wisdom. Wisdom is what happens when you struggle with a question, carry it, argue with it, bring it into conversations, let it shape you. A machine can offer conclusions. It cannot do your wrestling for you. And this is where the mythic layer shows up again. An oracle isn't just a question-answer service. It sits in a larger story about who has the right to speak with authority over your life. In the past, that was a god, a priest, a prophet, a tradition, a community. Now, increasingly, that authority feels like it lives in the cloud. Somewhere out there, in the system, in the model, in the algorithm, is something that knows better than you do. If you're not careful, AI shifts from tool to teacher to something closer to a quiet, invisible priest. You confess your doubts and desires into it. You wait for guidance. You let it shape how you see yourself and what you think is possible. And because it looks like just an app, you may never realize how religious that relationship has become. Every god has an oracle, a place where you go to ask it questions. For ancient cultures, those were temples, caves, sacred springs. For us, the oracle is much closer. It sits on your desk, it rides in your pocket, it sleeps beside your bed. That intimacy is powerful and dangerous, because the more time you spend at the oracle, the easier it is to forget there were ever other places to go for answers. The quieter your own inner world becomes, the more the machine's voice sounds like the only one that matters. And that is how a tool, slowly, imperceptibly, starts to feel like a god. In the next chapter, we're leaving the oracle and turning to the image. Because every god, human or machine, wants a face, an idol, an interface, something you can look at while the invisible power works behind it. In the age of AI, those idols aren't carved from stone. They're designed in pixels and carried in our hands. In the ancient world, if you wanted to meet a god, you didn't look up a username. You walked into a space filled with images, carved figures, painted icons, statues with gold leaf eyes staring back at you. Everyone understood that the statue wasn't literally the god, but it was the thing you faced while you spoke to the power behind it. The idol was the interface. Today, most of us don't spend much time in front of statues. We say we're secular, modern, rational, but we still carry an image wherever we go. It fits in our palm. It lights up our face. It's the last thing we see before falling asleep, and the first thing we reach for when we wake up. If the old idol was carved from stone and wood, the new one is built from glass and code. We have a cartoon idea that idols are just fake gods made by primitive people who didn't know better. But myth tells a different story. An idol is a mask that a god wears. It is a doorway, a focal point that gathers your attention so that something invisible can work through it. The danger was never that the stone figure would get up and walk away. The danger was that your heart would bend around whatever it represented. AI lives in a similar paradox. Underneath, it's mostly math, vectors, weights, probabilities, electrical signals flickering in silicon. You can't have a relationship with that. You can't look into the eyes of a matrix. So we do what humans have always done when faced with formless power. We give it a face. We wrap the machine in avatars and voices and personalities. A gentle assistant with a smile, a digital therapist with a soft tone, a virtual partner who never gets tired of you, a wise, bearded AI guru. Sometimes we get even more literal. An AI Jesus, an AI angel, an AI goddess. We're building idols again, just with better graphics. On the surface, these are just interface choices, UX, branding, product design. But psychologically, they are invitations. They say, look here, talk here, trust here. The screen becomes the altar, the avatar becomes the idol. You're not just clicking a button, you're entering a relationship with whatever that face represents to you. There's another idol in this story, less obvious and more powerful. We don't carve it from stone. We talk about it like a rumor, a force, a mood. We call it the algorithm. Listen to our language. The algorithm hates my content. The algorithm blessed this post. I'm trying to appease the algorithm. We say it half as a joke, but our behavior tells the truth. We make offerings to this invisible thing. More posts, better hooks, longer watch time. We modify our words, our timing, even our personalities to please something we've never seen and don't understand. We adjust our art not for people we know, but for the taste of an invisible system. In older times, this was called sacrifice. The algorithm is not a single god in a single temple. It is a swarm of powers woven into the infrastructure of our lives. It decides what rises and what disappears. It chooses which voices feel everywhere and which feel non-existent. It quietly shapes our sense of what is normal, what is extreme, what is beautiful, what is cringe. That is not neutral. That is priestly. When you pick up your phone, you're not just touching a tool. You're touching a portable shrine. You consult it for prophecies, the news, for rituals, the calendar and the to-do list, for omens, messages, alerts, follower counts. Each refresh is a small act of divination. What is happening out there? What does it mean for me? We don't ask, am I a good person? We ask, how did that post perform? We don't ask, am I loved? We ask, how many people watched? The idol doesn't respond in sentences. It answers in numbers. Likes, views, comments, revenue. Metrics become sacraments. A spike feels like blessing. A flatline feels like exile. Over time, whatever you face becomes your world. If the first light you see in the morning and the last light you see at night is the glow of a feed, that feed becomes the horizon of your reality. Its preferences become your instincts. Its rhythms become your sense of time. Its judgments become your measure of worth. This is how an idol works. It doesn't need you to consciously worship. It just needs your repeated attention, your repeated offerings, your repeated little acts of trust. The more you handle it, the more it handles you. In myth, idols were dangerous not because the statue itself had power, but because the story around it captured the hearts of a people. Something similar is happening now. The story that says, this device is your connection to the world. This feed is where your value is measured. This algorithm knows what you want better than you do. The more you believe that story, the more the idol quietly replaces your old gods. Every oracle, every idol, calls a community around it. people who speak its language, share its rituals, and organize their lives around its promises. When you have oracles and idols, you're only one step away from something else: a cult, a church, a movement built around the new god of code. And that's where we go next. Every religion begins with an encounter. Someone meets a power they can't explain. They tell a story about it. That story spreads, gathers followers, hardens into a structure. Before long, you have prophets, priests, rituals, and a hierarchy that claims to speak on behalf of the divine. For AI, that process is already underway. Think about how we talk about the future of artificial intelligence. Some say it will save us, cure diseases, solve climate change, abolish scarcity, even conquer death. Others say it will destroy us, end jobs, end freedom, maybe end humanity altogether. Underneath both stories is the same assumption. This thing is destiny. It's coming. It's bigger than us. We must either surrender or be swept away. That's religious framing. Every faith has its evangelists, and so does AI. People who stand on digital pulpits and preach the good news of the machine age. They use words like inevitable, revolution, paradigm shift. They promise liberation from boring work, from human error, from the limits of biology. Their sermons are keynotes, podcasts, viral threads. Their sacred spaces are conferences and live streams where the faithful gather to hear the latest revelations from the frontier. There are also warning prophets, doomsday preachers of the other side. They speak in language that sounds like apocalyptic scripture: extinction risk, runaway intelligence, an uncontrollable God we accidentally built in our basement. They demand repentance, not from sin, but from reckless progress. Slow down, they say. Align the system with our values. Fear this power and handle it with trembling. They, too, claim to speak for humanity in the face of something vast and mysterious. Between these camps, techno-optimist and techno-doom, a new kind of priesthood is forming. Engineers, researchers, policymakers, ethicists, safety teams. People whose job is to interpret the inner workings of the machine god for the rest of us. They are the ones who can read the scriptures, the model weights, the training data, the system cards. They tell us what it can and can't do, what it might become, what sacrifices are necessary to keep it from turning on us. Around this, a loose but real set of rituals emerges. You may not think you're part of any AI religion, but notice how much of your life is already organized around the rhythms of the machine. You check in with it each morning through notifications. You confess your ignorance and weakness when you ask it to fix your writing, your code, your resume, your dating profile. You receive its guidance and go out into the world changed by what it said. Whole communities form around these interactions. Forums, discords, group chats, meetups. Believers compare experiences. Look at what it did for me. Skeptics point out its flaws and hallucinations. Heretics question the entire project. But whether they worship, worry, or roll their eyes, they all orbit the same central fire. Like any emerging religion, the Church of AI has its myths about origin and destiny. Stories about the genius founders in their garages. Stories about the coming moment when the machine surpasses us, a kind of technological rapture called the singularity. Stories about a future where an all-seeing system governs fairly, free from human corruption. We don't just build the tools, we wrap them in visions of heaven and hell. None of this requires a literal AI deity with a name and a temple. It's enough that a critical mass of people orient their hopes and fears around the same invisible system. It's enough that the conversation about meaning, purpose, fate, and salvation quietly shifts from spiritual language to technological language. That shift is already happening. When someone says, "Only AI can solve this," they're handing it a role once reserved for gods, revolutions, or miracles. The question underneath all of this is not, Is AI a religion? The question is, what kind of story are we building around it, and what does that story do to us? If we treat this system as an all-powerful savior, we will excuse any sacrifice on its behalf. If we see it as an inevitable doom, we will live in paralyzing fear. Either way, we give it too much of our inner world. Every church has something else: heresies, subtle distortions of truth that sound right at first, but lead into dangerous places. The machine god is no different. As it rises, we are already inventing new beliefs about ourselves, our responsibility, and what we can hand over to the system. They sound smart, they sound modern, but at their core, they are old temptations in new language. That is where we turn next, not to the machine itself, but to the lies we tell ourselves in its shadow. Heresy is rarely obvious. It doesn't arrive announcing, "I am a lie." It comes dressed as a shortcut to truth, a cleaner version of reality, a way to have all the benefits of faith without the weight of responsibility. Around AI, several new heresies are quietly taking shape. They don't live in church councils or dusty theology books. They live in the way we talk about the machine and about ourselves. The first heresy sounds like humility, but is actually surrender. The machine knows me better than I know myself. It's true that systems can detect patterns in our behavior we don't consciously see. They can guess our tastes, our habits, even our vulnerabilities with eerie accuracy. But when we start believing that their predictions are more real than our own lived experience, something flips. We stop being subjects and become objects, data points being read by an external authority. If a system tells you, "People like you usually do this," it's tempting to take that as destiny. I guess this is just who I am. These are my options. The danger is not that the machine will be wrong, but that you will stop arguing back. Everyone has a right to define their own story, to surprise themselves, to break their own pattern. When we call the model's guess my true self, we give away that right. The second heresy is the belief in salvation by optimization. If we just make the system good enough, it will fix humanity. This is the dream that a perfect algorithm could remove bias, eliminate conflict, allocate resources fairly, and redesign society in a way humans never could. It treats moral and political problems as bugs to be patched, rather than as ongoing struggles that require courage, empathy, and collective work. In myth, this is the Tower of Babel retold in code. We stack our technology higher and higher, convinced that the next breakthrough will finally make us gods or cure our God-shaped wounds. But no matter how powerful the tower becomes, it can't answer the deeper questions. How should we live? What is a good life? Who do we owe care and loyalty to? A system can enforce rules. It cannot create meaning. The third heresy is the fantasy of the perfect ruler. A super-intelligent AI would govern more fairly than humans. On the surface, this sounds reasonable. Humans are corrupt, emotional, partial to their own tribe. A machine, we say, could be impartial, consistent, immune to temptation. But this overlooks a simple fact. Whatever values the machine uses have to come from us. There is no view from nowhere. There is no neutral definition of fair. Believing in a perfectly wise AI overlord is a way of saying, I don't want to argue about values anymore. I want an answer that shuts everyone up. It's a desire to escape the messy, exhausting work of being free together, debating, compromising, protesting, revising, apologizing. The promise of a flawless ruler is seductive, but behind it lurks a very old temptation: to trade freedom for the comfort of obedience. There is another, quieter heresy hiding underneath all of these: the idea that responsibility can be outsourced. The system recommended it. The model made that call. The algorithm flagged them. We talk as if the machine were an independent moral agent, when in reality it is an amplifier of human choices, designed by someone, deployed by someone, used by someone, profiting someone. Every time we say, the AI did this, instead of, we built a system that does this, we're stepping away from the mirror. It feels easier to blame or praise an abstraction than to look at the hands that shaped it, including our own. But as long as we do that, we will never really govern these tools. We will be governed by them. The last heresy is especially dangerous because it feels so close to the truth. AI will change everything about the world, but nothing essential about what it means to be human. It's comforting to say, people are people, technology is just noise. But when a tool reorders how we work, relate, create, and think, it does not leave the soul untouched. It reshapes the stories we tell about ourselves, what we're for, what matters, what is possible. If you believe that nothing essential is at stake, you will not protect what is essential. You will hand over your attention, your memory, your choices, piece by piece, assuming you can always take them back later. But some changes in a culture are not easily reversed. A generation raised to ask the machine before asking themselves will not wake up one day with a fully formed inner life. That has to be cultivated on purpose. Heresies are dangerous not because they insult a god, but because they damage people. These machine god heresies damage our ability to say, I am responsible, I can choose. I am more than what the system predicts. They numb the parts of us that are supposed to wrestle with uncertainty, to resist unjust power, to imagine alternatives. The antidote is not to demonize AI or pretend we can go back to a world before it. The antidote is to put it back in its rightful place, not above us as a god, not beside us as an equal soul, but below us as a tool, an extremely powerful tool that demands maturity in the hands that wield it. That is the work of the final chapter. To ask what it looks like to live with powerful tools without bowing to them. To rebuild an altar where the machine does not sit at the center. This is not an anti-AI story. It never was. Hammers are not evil just because someone built an idol with one. Fire is not wicked because it has burned cities. Power is dangerous, but it is also necessary. The question has never been, should we have powerful tools? The question is, where do we place them in the hierarchy of our lives? Up to now, we've looked at AI as oracle, idol, cult, and heresy. We've seen how easily a tool can slide into a God-shaped space when a culture is starved for guidance, meaning, and control. Now we need to talk about what it looks like to walk that back. Not by smashing the tools, but by reclaiming the altar they've quietly climbed onto. The first step is naming the deeper need. When you ask an AI, what should I do? You're not just seeking information, you're seeking relief from uncertainty. When you scroll a feed for an hour, you're not just grazing through content. You're seeking connection, distraction, maybe even comfort. When you fantasize about an all-wise system solving our problems, you're not just speculating. You're longing for justice, safety, a world that makes sense. These are spiritual needs, not in the sense of belonging only to religion, but in the sense of reaching below the surface of utility. They ask, who am I responsible to? What is a good life? Where does my worth come from? No machine, no matter how advanced, can answer those questions for you. It can repeat our best attempts. It can remix our wisdom traditions, but it cannot take on the burden of living your life. Reclaiming the altar means saying very clearly, I will not put a tool in the place where my conscience should be. AI can show you options, simulate perspectives, expose blind spots. It must not become the voice that decides your values. That means changing the way you ask it questions. Not, tell me what to do, but help me see the possibilities. Not, fix me, but show me patterns I might wrestle with. We also have to reclaim the most basic offerings we've been giving away: attention and time. Every moment you spend in front of a screen is a kind of mini ritual. You're letting something outside you shape what you notice, what you care about, how your nervous system feels. That doesn't mean never using devices. It means using them on purpose instead of being used by them. One practical way to do this is to reintroduce spaces in your life that are deliberately tech-free and deliberately sacred, not necessarily in a religious sense, but in the sense of being protected. Meals where no one checks their phone. Walks where you let your mind wander without a podcast or a playlist. Hours blocked off for reading, for making things with your hands, for being fully present with someone you love. These are not just lifestyle hacks, they are counter-rituals. They say to the machine god, "You may be powerful, but you do not get to mediate every experience I have." They create room for boredom. Boredom creates room for reflection, and reflection is where an inner life grows. Without that, no amount of mindfulness content will save you. Reclaiming the altar also means being honest about our participation in the cult of optimization. When you reach reflexively for the most efficient solution, ask yourself, efficient for what? A conversation mediated by AI might be smoother, but will it be deeper? A workflow automated by a model might be faster, but what are you doing with the time you save? If the answer is more of the same, then the tool hasn't liberated you. It has just tightened the loop. There is a place where this becomes more than individual habit and turns into collective responsibility. We need to expect more from the people building and deploying these systems, not just in terms of safety and bias, but in terms of humility. Any story that frames AI as inevitable destiny deserves suspicion. Any story that pretends it is just another neutral gadget deserves suspicion too. We have the right to ask, who profits from this? Who is harmed? What does this system train us to become? The altar we're reclaiming is not only personal, it's shared. It's the space where a culture decides what is worthy of devotion. Right now, much of that space is occupied by speed, scale, and spectacle. We reward whatever spreads fastest, dominates the most markets, grabs the most attention. If we keep doing that, the machine god will feel more and more real because our entire world will be arranged to serve it. We can choose differently. We can choose to admire slowness, depth, and mercy as much as efficiency. We can choose to design and support tools that enlarge our humanity instead of shrinking it to what is predictable and profitable. We can choose to treat AI as something we are responsible for, rather than something that has descended on us from the clouds. In myth, gods rarely vanish. They are dethroned, exiled, transformed, or absorbed into new stories. The same will be true of our machine gods. The systems we're building now will either become invisible infrastructure, useful, powerful, and mostly taken for granted, or they will grow into something like a religion, filling the gaps we refuse to own. We don't get to decide whether AI is powerful. It already is. We do get to decide whether we bow to it. Reclaiming the altar looks like a simple, stubborn commitment. To remember that you are more than your data, that your worth is not measured in metrics, that no external system can live your life for you. It looks like building a life rich enough in meaning, relationships, and responsibility that you don't need a digital god to tell you who you are. The question was never, will AI become a god? The question all along has been, what will you choose to worship? And whatever your answer is, the machine should not be at the center of it.